Hope well and all who have tuned in on today. We appreciate you coming in. I have a few announcements. Over the past week, we've had a few people go in and out of the hospital. This morning, Sister Donna Hatcher texted said she was in the hospital. Let's pray for her. Pray for Sister Rosalie Johnson. Sister Lisa and Sister Karen called and said their mother was also in the hospital, but she is gone home now. Sister Georgia Walls is in the hospital. Continue to pray for them as well. Before we go into our message for today, and we're going to do our Sunday school lesson. Brother Kenneth Davis is doing it. It's coming out of Esther chapter 7. Esther chapter 7, verses 1 through 10, I believe. So without further ado, we'll have Brother Davis come up and do our Sunday school lesson, and then we will go on with our message for today. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank God for another opportunity to talk about His Word. This morning, today's lesson, Injustice Will Be Punished, is found in the book of Esther. Interestingly enough, I discovered in my study of this book that it is unique from the standpoint that it is the only book in the Bible where God's name is not found. When you start with the first verse and read through the last verse of the book of Esther, you will not see God's name. That is not true of any other place in the Bible. You will not see people sacrificing to God. You will have no reference to the word of God or the law of God in the book of Esther. When the books of the Old Testament were being compiled, this absence of the mention of God caused quite a stir. But while the name of God is not present in the book of Esther, His fingerprints are everywhere. My study reveals that there is a word for this in theology called providence. Providence is the name of God, is the hand of God in the glove of history. It is the work of God whereby He integrates and blends events occurring in the universe in order to fulfill His original design for which it was created towards an end. It is God taking what you and I would call luck, chance, mistakes, happenstance, and stitches them into achieving His programs. In the book of Esther, God's people were living outside God's will. God told them to go back to Israel from Babylon, but many of them did not go. They stayed. They had become comfortable in what is now Persia that took over from Babylon. You know, we too can become comfortable in our sin. We can linger too long in those places and with people God does not desire us to be around. Instead of turning them towards God, they are causing us to become more and more like the things of this world. Things that have always been sinful for us for generations are now commonplace and acceptable. In today's lesson, they were at home out of the will of God. You, if you allow yourself, can become so comfortable living out of the will of God that it may seem too difficult to get back in it. In today's lesson, it involves a man by the name of Mordecai and his niece, known by the name of Esther, which was her Persian name. As I was reading a little background on today's lesson, this king, Xerxes, wanted his wife to dance before a group of men. She refused to do it. since she disobeyed him, the king, he brushed her aside. So the king found it necessary to find a new wife. The king's name was Xerxes, and he got angry at the queen because she had disobeyed him. He got his advisors to go out and gather up a fresh harem of young girls to choose a replacement for his queen. Esther was chosen to be a part of that harem. She was such a lovely young woman, and she impressed the king so much that he made her his queen. Our characters today, in today's lesson, of course, is King Xerxes, a powerful ruler who had ruled over a vast area. One of the other characters in today's lesson is a man by the name of Haman. Haman was a descendant of the people known as the Amalekites. He was also a descendant of Amalekite royalty. He is known as a vengeful and egotistical man and an advisor to the king. And we have Esther, the beautiful Jewish girl who was added to the king's harem. Haman hated Mordecai, Esther's uncle, because Mordecai refused to bow down to him and pay him homage. So Haman plotted to destroy not just Mordecai, but all of the Jewish people. Haman told the king that there were some people scattered in his kingdom of whom it was not beneficial for the kingdom to allow them to live. And he asked for the king's permission to eradicate them. The king, without checking any further, gave him permission to do so. Haman then wrote an edict stating that the Jews would be eliminated on a particular day. Mordecai persuaded Esther to speak to the king on behalf of the Jewish people, and he reminded her of her unique place, not only in the palace that she now resided in, but in history. He told her that there was a purpose for her coming to this place, the king's palace. He said to her, "You know you have come to this position just for this circumstance." He explained to her that her God-given beauty was far more than for arousing the king, and that God had brought her to this place for such a time as this. He encouraged her not to let those things go to waste. Esther also knew that going into the king, like her uncle had told her to do, could potentially result in her death. Because in the Persian custom, anyone who came to the king without being requested could be executed if the king did not extend to them his scepter. It makes me think about places that God puts us in. He puts us in as Christians in various environments for a reason. It could be on your job, it could be in your home, it could be in your community, and he gives you an opportunity to speak for him. You may be the only person who can, and he wants you to step up in those times and do what you're called to do. So before taking this plea to the king, Esther called for a fast among the Jewish people. So she and her maidens also did the same. They fasted for 3 days. And after that, she put on her royal robes and approached the king and sought an audience with him. And she was received into his presence. And after that, she asked a request of the king that he and Haman come to a feast that she had prepared. And after the first day of feasting, the king asked her what was it she wanted. And she asked that both he and Haman would come again the next day for another feast. So after leaving the feast, Haman ran into Mordecai, who still refused to bow down to him. And he went home and spoke to his family and friends, who encouraged him to build a gallows on his property so that he might go in the next morning and ask the king to give Mordecai to him so that he could put him to death on that gallows. So on that night, the king could not sleep, and he gave orders. As I was reading this, it came to me how unique this situation occurred. On the night before, the king could not sleep. So he asked his servants to bring a logbook and read to him from that book so that he would become sleepy and go off to sleep. As it turned out, the very page that they went to happened to be a story about how Mordecai had saved the king from being assassinated by two other people. In this life, sometimes you'll be involved in circumstance. You don't know why it happens, but it happens for a reason. When the king found out that Mordecai had saved his life, he asked Haman, how can I reward someone who does something great for this kingdom? Haman didn't know it was Mordecai who he was talking about. He thought it was him. He said, King, if someone did something great for this kingdom, I would do something great for them. I'd give them a nice robe. I'd give them one of your finest horses. We would just do great things for that person. So the next day, the king said, go ahead and do it for them. Get everything together. That next day, Haman found out the person that they were talking about was Mordecai. It stunned him. It surprised him. So in the end, Mordecai ended up not being killed by the king. In fact, he was honored. And today's lesson is a good message as to what God can do and how he can do it, because he does things in his own way. God bless you and have a blessed day.
For I know
us for that review of the Sunday school. Let us pray. Oh Lord our God, we thank you again for Jesus. We thank you, Lord, that you allowed us to come together one more time. We thank you, Lord, for your word. Thank you, Lord, for your Holy Ghost that reveals your word to us. Now, Lord, let us say the things you'd have us say the way you'd have it be said, that our eyes will see, our ears will hear, and our hearts will receive. We bind everything that's not like the Lord, that you get the praise, you get the honor, and you get the glory. These are all blessings we believe we receive. We ask in Jesus' name, all we will say, amen. It's strange that during this time, this pandemic we're going through, I probably have gotten more texts from my sister than I've gotten in the last 3 months, the past couple of weeks, last few weeks. She sent me a couple that I really like, and I try to pass it on. If you got Messenger, I try to send it to you. She sent me these songs. But anyway, over in our lesson, I would like you to direct your attention. This is the Sunday after Resurrection Sunday. Last week we was in John chapter 20. Today we're going to be in John chapter 21. No, we weren't in John chapter 20 last week. That was Bible class. I'm sorry. But anyway, we're going to be in John chapter 21. For those who do turn in with us on Bible class, we have Bible class every Wednesday for a conference call. And a lesson this coming week is going to come out of Mark chapter 4. So if you want to read ahead, it's going to be Mark chapter 4. But today our lesson is coming out of John chapter 21, verses 15 through 22. And I'm going to be reading to you out of the New King James Version. New King James Version. So when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? He said to him, that's Peter, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my lambs. He said to him a second time again, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter responds, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, tend my sheep. He said to him third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And Peter said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Most surely I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands. Another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish. This he spoke, signifying by what death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, follow me. Then Peter turned around and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following, who also leaned on his breast at the supper and said, Lord, who is the one who betrays you? Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, but Lord, what about this man? Jesus said to him, if I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? You follow me. Just follow Jesus. Our other statement in our subject is, do you love Jesus more than? Just follow Jesus, or do you love Jesus more than? Jesus has risen from the grave. His disciples already seen him a few times, and there was no question that he was alive to them. Then one day, Peter, along with 7 of the other disciples, decided to go fishing. Our lesson says they fish all night and they catch nothing. In the morning, Jesus shows up. However, none of them recognize him because he's at the shore and they're out in the middle of the sea. Jesus yells out to them and says, ask if they've caught anything, and when they respond, nothing, Jesus tells them, throw their nets on the right side of the boat. When they do, their nets get full and they realize that it's Jesus on the shore. When they get back to the shore, they find a fire has been started with some fish and bread's already cooking. Jesus invites them to come and bring up their catch and join in. After they have eaten, they're sitting back enjoying the moment. You know, they think this is like at old times. You know, old times, Jesus is there. They're all fat, dumb, and happy, and they're enjoying the moment. But then Jesus has to mess the whole moment up. He asked Peter a question. He said, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Of course, Peter responds in affirmative, and Jesus asked him again. In fact, Jesus asked Peter 3 times if he loves him. You know, Peter gets a little uncomfortable after the 3rd time, so after the 3rd time, Peter exclaimed, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Now, reader, we're not told, but we can surmise that Jesus is questioning Peter 3 times about his love. Surely has a little to do with Peter denying Jesus 3 times on the day of the crucifixion. But getting back to the question that Jesus asked Peter, he said, Simon, son of Jonas, do you love me more than these? And the question is, more than what? See, we're not there. We're not there. And because we're not there, this question is ambiguous to us. And so maybe if we had been there, Jesus might have motioned and said, do you love me more than this? Or do you love me more than that? But we don't know. All we know is what Jesus asked. He said, do you love me more than these? Maybe Jesus was talking about, do you love me more than your brethren or your friends? Or maybe Jesus said, do you love me more than your brother or your friends love me? Which, of course, Peter really can't answer because he doesn't know how much they love him. Or, what I kind of believe is most likely Jesus was asking him, do you love me more than these fish or fishing? Why is this relevant? Because earlier, when Jesus first had one of his first encounters with Peter and James and John and Andrew, if you remember the story there, that Jesus is coming and he used after Peter and John and James and Andrew had fished all night, that they're sitting there cleaning their nets, and Jesus walks by and he said, can I use your boat? And he preaches a sermon, and after he preaches the sermon, he tells them, launch out in the deep, and they want to argue with Jesus and say, well, we fished all night. But because you asked, we do, and the Bible says they put down their nets, and they get so much that the nets begin to break. After that, they come to the shore, and Peter says, depart from me, I'm a sinful man. And Peter tells Jesus, and Jesus tells Peter, nonsense, from here on, you're going to fish for people. And the Bible says they left everything and started to follow him. But here they are, fishing again. Fishing for fish. Whatever these is, that's not just really important. What is important, and the question we need to ask ourselves, each and every one of us, whether we're young or old, is, do I love Jesus above all else? Do I love Jesus more than? More than what? In other words, what is it in our life that I'm putting ahead of what Jesus may want me to do? Now, we know loving God above all else is important. For when Jesus asked the question, what is the greatest commandment? Jesus responded, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. The second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So we know loving God is very important, but are these just words to us that we say every Sunday when we're at church, or say when we do the Decalogue? Is it just words? And you say, well, maybe fishing is not our issue. Okay? You say, well, I don't have a problem. I am definitely not putting fish above Jesus. But I had a member once who told me, Pastor, I'd be at church on Sunday. He said, but I work Monday through Friday, then on the weekend, I just can't get off this motorcycle. It's got me. So basically, his motorcycle was more, he loved the motorcycle more than Jesus. But y'all said, that's not my problem. Maybe it's TV. You know, how many of us during this pandemic are glued to our televisions waiting for the latest update? Asking ourselves, when will it be safe to go out again? When will I be able to get our hair done? When will we start playing sports again? When this pandemic first started and made its way here to the United States, people were buying up all the bread, meat, bathroom paper, toilet, and paper towel. And I'm wondering and asking myself, why? Especially
especially those of us who are Christians. And you know, some of us love to eat. I understand that. But Jesus said, therefore, do not get anxious, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the Gentiles seek all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things shall be yours as well. During these times of sheltering in place, how many of us spent some time at home reading our Bibles more, praying a little more? You know, there's a song we used to sing. There's a hymn that says, now, let us have a little talk with Jesus. Let us tell him all about our troubles. He'll hear our faintest cry, and he will answer by and by. You'll feel a little prayer wheel turning, and you know a little fire is burning. Find a little talk with Jesus makes it right. The second verse said, I may have doubts and fears. My eyes be filled with tears, but Jesus is a friend who watches day and night. I go to him in prayer. He knows my every care, and just a little talk with Jesus makes it right. The whole point being, if we're getting anxious during this time, we might find that if we spend more time with Jesus, the anxiety would go away. Paul writes in Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 and 7, be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. So you say, well, Pastor, I already have a problem with the TV. That's not my issue. But maybe it's sleeping. You know, I know we need to get our rest, but some of us just sleep too much. Proverbs 20:13 says, do not love sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes, and you will be satisfied with bread. Maybe it's talking on the phone, and some of us love to talk, but the Bible says, if anyone appears to be religious but cannot control their tongue, they deceive themselves. And we may be sure that their religion is useless. It comes out of James chapter 1, verse 26. James 1:19 says, therefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. I remember when I was growing up, my parents would say you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. That means you're supposed to listen more than you talk. My father had an old saying also that said, an empty wagon makes the most noise. Trying to tell us when you talk too much, there's more indication that you don't know as much as you think you do. I used to tell people all the time, he had another saying that said, if you see someone always talking, they got to be either lying or gossiping, because nobody knows that much. Well, maybe it's texting, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, or some other form of social media. And what we're talking is about, do you love Jesus more than? Maybe it's working too much, trying to make that extra dollar. 1 Timothy tells us, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered far from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Whatever it is, Jesus is asking today, do you love me more than? Maybe it's your family. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son, daughter more than me is not worthy of me. That's what Matthew 10:37 tells us. The whole point being that Jesus wants to be number one. Do you love me? So do you love me more than? Peter's response was, yes, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. And if we really love you, if you have to understand, what did Jesus respond to Peter? Feed my sheep. So we really love Jesus. Jesus has a job for us to do. He says, feed my sheep. We are never saved just so we can make it into heaven. No. We never saved just so God can bless us. We are saved to be a blessing to someone else. In the Spider-Man movies, there was a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. Jesus puts it this way, but he that knew not and did not commit things worthy of stripes shall be beaten with few stripes. But for unto whomsoever much is given to him shall much be required, and whom man ever committed much in him, they will ask the more. Jesus is telling Peter, if you love me, prove it by helping someone else. Ephesians 4, verses 11 through 14 tells us, so Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, the teachers, to equip his people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become more mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. That we no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves, and blown here and there by every wind of teaching, by the cunning and craftiness of people in their deceitful scheme. Our job, if we love the Lord, is to help somebody else. Why? Because it's not all about us. John writes, but whoso hath this world's goods, and seeth his brother have need, and shutteth up his compassion of his heart from him, how dwells the love of God in him? You know, my father, he really wasn't a soloist, but he used to sing a song, if I can help somebody as I travel on this way, then my living will not be in vain. So if I really love the Lord more than, I have another thing I have to do. If you remember the story, as we read, it says, as they're walking away, Peter looks around and he sees John walking behind them, and he asks, Jesus said, okay, what about him? What's he going to do? You know, what do you want him to do? And Jesus responds and says, if I will that he tarry till I come, that's none of your business. You follow me. The whole point being there is our job is to do what God told us to do. It's none of our business what everybody else is doing. We need to make sure we're following him, doing all that we're supposed to do. Too many times in church we get caught up in what everybody else is doing or not doing. You know how we are. We try to get everybody else straight. Okay? Here's the problem with that. None of us are really doing everything we ought to be doing. Yeah. During this pandemic we're going through, there's a lot of blame being thrown about who is not doing this, who is not doing that. And that is not to say there's something wrong with holding people accountable. But at the end of the day, the only person I really am responsible for is me. Have I done all God wants me to do during this time? Am I praying for everyone I'm supposed to be praying for? Am I helping those that I need to help? Am I encouraging those who need to be encouraged? The truth be known. You know, Jesus said on one occasion, he said, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your eye, and then you will see clearly, remove the speck from your brother's eye. Jesus is telling us, don't worry about what others are doing or not doing. You just follow me. I remember my uncle telling me years ago, he said, Raymond, he said, if you want to make it in this world, you got a choice. You have one responsibility. Spend half your time taking care of your business, and the other half staying out of everybody else's. The writer of Hebrews said, therefore, seeing we are compassed about with so great a cloud over us, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us. Let us run with patience the race that is set before us. But here's the key. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. The thing is, we're supposed to be following Jesus. Nobody else, because he is our example. He is the one that guides us and directs us. The Bible says, trust the Lord with all thine heart, lean not unto thine own understanding. In all our ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct our path. The Bible tells us that thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. The whole point is God's word, and Jesus is our example. That is what we're supposed to be following above all else. It's okay to listen to this and listen to that, but at the end of the day, our focus is supposed to be on Jesus. I always go back to this verse that Joshua told, that God told Joshua in the first chapter of Joshua, after Moses had died, and he tells Joshua, he said, Moses, my servant, is dead. The whole point is, Joshua, you can't depend on Moses anymore. Okay. And he tells all means. He said, therefore, you meditate day and night on my word. Then you will have good success. Then you will make your way prosperous. If we follow Jesus, he's the one that will take care of us. The Bible says that God will supply, not the government, not the job, but God will supply our needs according to his riches and glory. If we follow Jesus, that's our number one goal. And that's what God wants us to do today. Follow him. And we follow him, everything else will take care of itself. That's the message for today. It all begins with knowing Christ for yourself. Yeah, you can't follow Jesus if you don't know him. You got to meet him. You got to meet him. The way you meet him, it's simple. You just come to him and you say, Lord Jesus, I believe that you came and you died and you rise again. And we believe if you will make that commitment, you make that statement wherever you are. You don't have to be in a building. You don't have to be in church. You don't have to be in a group of folks. You can be all by yourself. And just say, Lord, I believe you came, you died, and you rose again. And the Bible says, and you make that confession, thou shalt be saved. We ask you, if you have not made that commitment, do so today. We thank you as we hear our final selection.